Welcome to Why We Talk, a platform for leaders and visionaries to discuss important topics impacting women, children, and communities of color. It is here that we create bridges in the space of indifference. I'm Dr. LaRhonda Magras, CEO of YWCA Central Alabama. YWCA Central Alabama is on a mission to stand against racism. We take a stand against racism every day by raising awareness about the impact of institutional and structural racism, and by building community among those who are working on behalf of racial justice. Stand Against Racism provides the opportunity for communities around the country to identify issues that really inspire us to take a stand against racism, to unite our voices, to educate, advocate, and promote racial justice. And for centuries, we've watched art shape the narrative, countless racial and gender equity movements. This truth remains today. I am so excited to be speaking with an outstanding artist and change maker in order to kick off our 16th annual Stand Against Racism. And to reserve time, I encourage you to go to our website at ywcabham.org to read her bio. I'm so glad to welcome poet and educator extraordinaire, Ashley M. Jones. Welcome to our Why We Talk series. I tell you, it is indeed an honor. We have been waiting for you to come. And I am just thrilled to have this conversation with you today, and would love to just jump on in and really start by asking you this question. I think, Ashley, you are the youngest and the first Black woman to hold the title of Poet Laureate in our state, in the state of Alabama. An honor that was established in 1930, so 92 years, who's counting? And we have our first. In your book, Reparations Now, and I just want to get it here, and of course, I think I might need to put on my glasses to read it, but in your book, Reparations Now, your poem, Friendly Skies, or Black Woman Speaks Herself into God. There's a verse that reads, "Reader, this might be how you felt sitting in the movie theater's strobe lit box when you saw Black Panther, when you realized a Black person could feel as big as God, could save the world and make it home in time for dinner, run a whole country against no white background, could know all the land and its secrets and roam the afterworld, leisurely resting after a life of nothing colonized, after all the sweat of work done just for self, of work unstolen and unenslaved." I believe that accurately sums up where we are really in this moment of history. I know I remember watching Black Panther and feeling tremendous pride. With creativity and transparency, you've illustrated these truths and really encouraging us to take a look at ourselves. So my first question is, how can literature serve as a vehicle for social change?
Well, I think literature and poetry in specific has a really unique quality. It speaks to the human condition, and it speaks, I think, to someone's soul. So where you might read a history book and just kind of intellectually understand something, a poem can transform that experience into a feeling. And when you have a feeling, you can act. So I really think poetry and literature in general, I mean, I'm a poet, so I'm a little biased, yes, but all sorts of written art can help speak to people's hearts and change them, away from discriminatory practices, hopefully.
You said speaking to heart, and that really, I think really resonates certainly with me. My sister's a poet, just want to let you know. So I called, I called her last night. Okay, what you asked her,
Yeah.
So we had a great conversation, but she definitely said the same sort of words in terms of speaking to the heart.
Right.
This Why We Talk is dedicated to highlighting our 16th annual Stand Against Racism, and that theme is we can't wait. Equity and justice now. There's something very powerful, and there's a sense of urgency in that message. This country was founded on the idea of building a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. More than 200 years later, that dream has yet to be fully achieved. Though generations of civil rights activism have led to these important gains, we know that we are still behind. So I ask you, when you hear that title of our theme, what resonates with you?
Yeah, I mean, it is so urgent. And I have some poems that I want to read, but I first want to say the urgency has been urgent since 1619. It has always been important for Black people specifically to be seen as people. When you talk about the nation built for the people, by the people, we have to really understand what was meant when they said people. And if we're still at that moment of trying to understand who people are and being included in that, of course, it's very urgent for us to get these things done now. And these poems that I want to read address the long span of time that we've been fighting this same fight. And I think it also will resonate with those of us who are alive now, because again, we're still fighting these same struggles.
Absolutely.
So this first poem is called Manifest Destiny. And it tells the story of America. Manifest destiny. And so he learned that the land could be called a name. So he called it mine. And so he learned it could be bordered with blood. And so he called it conquest. And he learned that the land was willing to give fruit and flower. And he called it profit. And so he saw some other folk planting and praising, and he called them enemy. And so he saw there were armies to guard those flowering folk, and he called them prey. And so he saw the ocean, and what was it but a highway to make more borders? And so he saw the bright and peaceful sea, and he littered it with trade, the bodies stacked next to the crops, the textiles, and the rot of disease. And so he ground hope and God into dust and called it rights. And so he heard the wind blowing joy over its people, and he sliced it up with law. And so he kept slicing for 500 years. And so he built his things around him. And so his coffers never emptied. And so he took wives and made children. And so he gave them too a price. And so he saw each blade of grass and counted it as currency. And so his blood was transfused with gold. And so he built a wall around himself to keep his many riches in, the walls encased with bone, even his heart, a fortress of muscle and money. Listen now, your past and future generations, your hoarded hall will spoil where you stand. So I have two other poems, and I'll say too, that poem that I just read, I wish that everyone would understand the history of our country truthfully and honestly. Everything that I wrote was researched. I didn't make any of it up. These things really happened. And once we can get to that point, I think, of reading something and comprehending that something that we read, I think we'll be moving in a good direction. So I'm gonna read the last section of the title poem of this book, which is called Reparations Now, Reparations Tomorrow, Reparations Forever. And this poem was constructed using text from Governor George Wallace's 1963 inauguration speech. So in some of the first sections, I've taken literal words from that speech, which is quite a doozy to read, I have to say. Yes. Reading it front to back, it's just astounding. And even more astounding is that the words he used we can hear them still out of the mouths of some politicians we have today. Some of that is in here, and this poem attempts to show the need for repair. The word reparations is a really politicized word, and some people are very afraid of that word, but it comes from the root repair, and we have to repair the nation. We have to repair ourselves. If there are those of us out there who still feel threatened enough to murder someone because they assume they're going to do some harm just because of the color of their skin or the religion they practice or their sexual orientation, etc., we have to repair that. Something is broken inside. So this last section addresses all the powers that be. And these are my words, not George Wallace's, which you probably will be able to tell once I start reading it. Yes. But it's just a plea for that repair to come. It's called A Case for Reparations. When, Governor, can we enjoy the full richness of the great American dream? My grandmother was a sharecropper. My grandfather beat his Black wife and Black children. My uncle was arrested for a crime he didn't commit. In America, even the shadows of Black people are Black enough to hide all innocence. Some nights, I dream of being killed like Emmett Till, or Trayvon Martin, or Sandra Bland, or insert Black person's name here. Some nights, I insert my name there. Is that the American dream? Governor, president, mayor, boss man, woman with a cell phone or a police badge or a bank account, and the skin tender enough to make murder legal. When will you be tired of the taste of Black blood? Sometimes I'm singing a song and you make that feel like death. Sometimes I'm dancing a dance and you make that feel like shame. Sometimes I'm sitting on my porch just trying to eat a melon and you make that feel like I'm selling my Black soul. My parents told me I could be anything, even God. That's the least I'm owed, to know I'm worth heaven, yes, but also worth a life on earth. My mother told us we were pretty enough to be dolls, pretty enough to be praised in the book of Barbie. That's the least I'm owed, a face, skin, hair, so obviously, inherently, objectively beautiful. It's frozen in plastic and sold to kids all over America to hug and love and look at with the eyes of dreams. What, you think all I want is money? What, you think money can ever repay what you stole? Give me land. Give me all the blood you ripped out of our backs, our veins. Give me every snapped neck and the noose you wove to hoist the body up. Give me the screams you silenced in so many dark and lustful rooms. Give me the songs you said were yours, but you know came out of our lips first. Give me back Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and Medgar Evers. Give me back the beauty of my hair, the swell of my hips, the big of my lips. Give me back the whole Atlantic Ocean. Give me a never-ending blue and a mule.
My goodness. Oh, I tell you, I mean, when you mentioned just the whole politicizing, I think of the word, you're right. And those words really describe, dignity. It describes, yes, what I'm owed is beyond paper. Really.
Right, exactly.
I love that.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow, and I know you wanted to, all y'all from Alabama.
Yeah. I'll say, just a note for those watching, if you didn't know why I said a mule, there's also a saying that Black people are owed 40 acres and a mule, and we never got the acres or the mule, so I want that too.
Yes, that's right. Let's be clear.
Right, exactly, let's be clear. So the last poem I'll read in response to this question, thank you for letting me read all these poems.
Thank you.
This one is one that I call one of my greatest hits, and the reason that I say that is not because I'm conceited. I'm definitely not. I am a Leo, but kind of anti-Leo.
All right, Leo. I was
Yeah, people have, well, we can talk about that off camera, but anyway, so this poem, I call it that because I read it so often. And I actually got to read it on Good Morning America, which was really exciting to represent the state with this particular message. So this poem begins with a quote from Dr. King, and it talks about how racism exists everywhere. That's part of the struggle, is teaching people that racism wasn't invented in the South and that it doesn't only live here in the South. So Dr. King's quote reads, "The straitjackets of race prejudice and discrimination do not wear only Southern labels. The subtle psychological technique of the North has approached in its ugliness and victimization of the Negro, the outright terror and open brutality of the South." And that's from Dr. Martin Luther King, Why We Can't Wait. This poem is called All Y'all Really from Alabama. This here, the cradle of this here nation. Everywhere you look, roots run right back south. Every vein filled with red dirt, blood, cotton. We the dirty word you spit out your mouth. Mason-Dixon is an imagined line. You can theorize it or wish it real, but it's the same old ghost, see-through, benign. All y'all from Alabama. We the wheel turning cotton to make the nation move. We the scapegoat in a land built from death. No longitude or latitude disproves the truth of founding fathers' sacred oath. We hold these truths like dark snuff in our jaw. Black oppression's not happenstance, it's law.
You know, let me tell you, we talked a little bit. I'm from Chicago. We had this
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
no, it doesn't just exist in the South.
Right.
Trust me on that. So my gosh, thank you. I want to just kind of step into this question really. We continue to see, as we were talking about these same sort of issues today, we recognize that systemic racism really can result in these adverse health conditions for people of color. There's racial bias in healthcare. There's no questioning that. And it's been linked to the fact that Black infants are twice as likely to die than white infants. And Black mothers are 3 to 4 times, this is really an issue in Alabama, more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than their white counterparts. But it really feels that these issues are not, they're going ignored and they're not being addressed. Would you speak to this, like, I think this feeling of just being invisible?
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, just hearing those statistics, it kind of gives you pause, you know, just knowing that our very lives are at stake. People often think that when we talk about these very political terms, that it's all on paper, but it does manifest, as you said, in our actual bodies. And the feeling of invisibility is something that I have experienced in life. I think anyone who is a person of color or is marginalized has felt that way. And as a Black woman, there are so many ways in which I feel invisible, unfortunately. I have some poems that are going to talk about that. But yeah, I mean, anywhere from our hair to our womb to the way that we speak, all of these things are either ignored or seen wrongly in some way. And this first poem I want to read is about how Black women have really been the backbone of this entire nation. And you can look that up. If anybody, at any time, if you doubt anything I say, you can read a history book.
That's right, that's right.
And facts are the facts, you know. Zora Neale Hurston said that the Black woman was the mule of the world. And what she meant by that was that we're carrying everything. Even though obviously Black people in general are oppressed, Black people, Black women are both Black and women. So we have double oppression to deal with. And even in the workplace now, there's discussions about how Black women are often given the load to carry for their office mates. So this poem I'm going to read is about that idea. And it is called, I Cannot Talk About the South Without Talking About Black Women. My grandmothers made America, made the fibers that made us warm, made us invincible, heroines. To tell you who they are, I must start with who they are not. Servants, kitchen-bound mammies, silently obedient wives. We can't, in our modern comforts, imagine the survival they learned was theirs to claim. Can't hold the light they burned through this colonial darkness. What tricks this nation, this American South, pulled minute by minute to keep my grandmothers convinced. The body you're in is not enough. Your race and your gender work together to mark you less, to mark you takeable. But what they didn't know was that my grandmothers still had an unmovable strength, enough to build a bridge from here to heaven. I know when I leave this broken earth, I'll find them there, sweetening every hour. My grandmothers raised a generation of American men. There is no other way to say this. Look at any Southern family and you'll find somewhere in a past most will not claim a Black woman. These men who call themselves bootstrapping and self-made, somewhere there's a Black woman and her unthanked hands who lifted them to where they are now. My father tells a story of the sons of his grandmother's employers, how they, instead of the pension she was promised, decided to give her a damned old tire, an old suitcase, dusty in the yard. What thanks is this for the years she raised that family, for the care they cannot forget. My father could never forgive those men, their Southern tradition, their American tradition. Even now, they tell us Black women are going to save this whole nation with votes or magic or our style taken and renamed. But this is no longer the land of masses and mammies, and we are only superheroines for our own daughters and sons. My grandmothers did not give their lives for me to keep nursing this country, to keep shucking and jiving in a bizarro American dream. My grandmothers are worth more than this corrupt remembering. Now there is no room for the Dixieland lie. We no longer hold these truths you made us accept. Under God, yes, we hear him singing a song of powerful love, despite the united hate of America. Grandmothers, women made of salt and spirit, you are faith continuous. Continue us, raise us to be heroes and heroines, to tell this country that we are not mules, not beasts. You, an army of workers and wives, we hid our fears and woes in your indestructible, ever-present ladiness. The blood you pass down to us is all we will ever need to save our lives.
Wow. There's so much in there. This one part, and I was speaking with Daphne earlier about this, and look at any Southern family and you'll find somewhere in their somewhere in the past, most will not claim a Black woman. So there, it's really speaking to that, either, just us being invisible, but propping people up. I honestly just, it really resonated certainly with me. These, oh my gosh, yes, the invisible, that's the one I want to hear about too, is this third grade birthday party.
Oh gosh.
So that was your experience. Tell me how that one came about.
Yeah, so all of my poems are based in the truth. Sometimes it's something that happened to somebody else, often it's something that happened to me. I attended a magnet school. I always went to magnet schools my whole career. And the school that I went to here in Birmingham was very multicultural. It was wonderful, wonderful school. But as is the case with most specialized schools, there weren't a lot of people of different races. There were mostly white children at that time, and then a few of us who were different races. So there were a lot of experiences that I had where people would say or do things that just weren't quite right. And I was young, so I didn't quite understand what was wrong. I just knew it hurt. And these two poems talk about that. It's sort of a pretend cassette tape And sometimes when I read to young people, I have to explain what a cassette
I know.
is.
I'm like, my kids do not know what a cassette is.
Right, which, I mean, I'm 31, so I thought I was still young, but some of these young kids are making me question that.
That's right.
So side A is the third grade experience, and side B is in high school, when another sort of strange experience happened when someone committed what is now called a microaggression, although I kind of just say they're aggressions.
Right.
It doesn't feel small.
Right.
So I'll just read these two, side A and side B. So side A is third grade birthday party. When we pulled up at her house, I realized that feeling that I felt in kindergarten when my best friend's family made him leave my Blackness alone. When he and this blonde wonder played house, she replacing me, when I couldn't even play blocks with them, my hands too dark and small. That feeling as she stole the laughs right out of my precious little throat, when she stole the plastic broccoli and steak from my wooden cooktop. That feeling can happen when your parents take you to that blonde birthday party in the suburbs, and when even the cobblestones cackle at how out of place you look. Side B, Roebuck is the ghetto. High school friend, he really just a boy. He really just a boy who sit at my lunch table. He really just a metallic smile and a slice of ham between white bread. He say, where you live? I say, Roebuck. Say, you know, over by, that's the ghetto, he say. That's where Black folks stay, he say. That's po folk, he say. You less than me, he say. You not as good as the crumbs living between my teeth. No, it's a suburb, I say. Suburb. Roebuck no suburb, he say. Hoover, Vestavia, Mountain Brook are suburbs. Suburbs is white. My neighbor's white, I say. Neighbors listen to Rush Limbaugh. Neighbors work the polling place and ask if we Republican. Neighbors cut our grass without asking when we first moved in. Neighbors think we good. You don't know Roebuck, I say. He smile, he laugh, he chew my zip code like an old wad of gum. Oh, I know, he say. I know it all.
Wow. How did that make, my gosh, I can imagine how that made you feel. What?
Yeah, well, and I have to give a disclaimer. He didn't say this so poetically. I, poeticized some of it. He did not say you're not as good as the crumbs, but the way that he said what he said, which was, oh my gosh, that's, it's a bad place. That's what I felt. And I was surprised. Like, you're always surprised when these things happen, even though as a Black person, like, you are like raised to know people are going to say these things to you. When it happens, it's always a surprise because it's often coming from someone who you trust or who you think is your friend, and they maybe are your friend, and they don't realize what they're saying to you. They don't know, how it might feel. So I just remember feeling just like taken aback, and I didn't really know how to respond, and I knew I felt very hurt. And I kind of just got quiet for the rest of the day. I couldn't interact with anybody because I just felt invisible, honestly.
I think that it hurts more when those that you trust and who are friendly. So these racial biases continue to impact our girls of color, especially Black girls, leaving them pushed out of school over police. Maybe they're too sassy.
Right.
And really just adultifying, I think, Black girls. And who are nearly 5 times more likely to be suspended from school than their white counterparts. We believe our collective work is trying to root out injustice, really, and transform institutions and really to create a world that really sees women, girls, and people of color the way we do, equal, powerful, and unstoppable. What does equal, powerful, and unstoppable, when you hear that? I mean, I think you are unstoppable. But what does that mean?
Wow, I mean, I have hopes for all the young people that I work with. I don't have kids of my own yet, maybe one day, but those who I work with, I hope that they feel unstoppable and they feel equal to anyone that they encounter. But I also know that the world is going to test that confidence. I mean, it happened to me certainly throughout my life, even though I had amazing parents who filled us up with all this confidence, and self-assurance. You still encounter those things in the world that make you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not as good, or maybe I can't have feelings like other girls can. Just to your point about Black girls being suspended more often. Even as an adult now, I find myself editing my emotions because I don't want anyone to perceive me as aggressive or to perceive me as attacking them or, that kind of thing, even though I'm just having a human emotion. And it all goes back to we are people.
That's right.
That is the baseline of the whole struggle.
Right.
It's just affirming that we are human beings, period. So I do want to read some poems.
Yeah.
That's my thing. So
well, it's your thing, and I love it. Love it.
So this first one is about my mom and how she and my dad, just like I said, gave us so much confidence as children. We grew up in a household where we never questioned that Blackness was good because they told us all the time, it's okay to be Black. It's great to be Black. You should celebrate your Blackness. And they encouraged us to see ourselves in everything. So when we talked about God, they said, God can be Black. We're Black. God can be that too. Nobody's seen God. So right. Or even something like Santa Claus. My dad bought a Santa Claus like decoration from a store when I was really little, and it was white when he bought it. The next morning, Santa Claus was Black. He had painted Santa Claus.
Your daddy.
He was an amazing dad. May he rest in peace. He passed away last year, but that was so important to me to see that, to know that anything at all could be me. I could be anything at all. And it even trickled down, this poem we'll talk about, into my Barbies. I loved Barbies.
Oh, me too.
That was my thing. I would spend hours just like dressing them, redressing them, doing their hair. I do it with myself now. I mean, I'm not like shaped like a Barbie, but I dress myself as if I were a Barbie.
There you go.
But she would only let us have Black dolls for a super long time. The furthest we got as far as different races, we had some brown dolls, maybe like Latina dolls, and then we had a Mulan doll. That was it. We could never have a white doll. When we were really young, we thought, like, Mom, what's the problem? All of our friends are different races, and you tell us to love everyone and accept everyone, so why can't we have different dolls? Well, her reason was that when she was younger, she didn't have any Black dolls. They weren't really made when she was a kid. And the dolls that she had were white, and they were hand-me-downs from a family that her mother worked for as a domestic worker. And she said she didn't want her daughters growing up thinking that that was the standard of beauty they had to aspire to. She wanted us to be able to imagine in our, playtime, imagine ourselves in that future that we were, pretending. And also to know that we were beautiful. We were dolls. We didn't have to look at the white girls in our class and think, oh, well, that's pretty. We could look at ourselves and think that. So, and I didn't know that until I got older, and I was like, man,
That's what she was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this poem sort of talks about that, and it's dedicated to Black women and girls who didn't make it, who were taken by this world unjustly. So it's called She is Beauty, She is Grace, and it's for Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland and Olawatoyin Salau and so many killed Black girls. My mother always told me I was beautiful. She oiled my scalp with proud mother care. She bought me baby and Barbie dolls who shared my skin, brown beauties who smiled back at me, whose infinite stories I told each day in my playtime heaven. My mother gave me dreams and a Barbie dream house. She gave me the right way to tie my shoes and tuck my shirt. She gave me a well-perfumed joy. She told me how God made me Black and worthy. She gave me lullabies badly but beautifully sung. She gave me midnight snacks when I couldn't sleep. My mother gave me love, gave me life. She knew, surely, what awaited me outside her door. She knew what she and Dad could not stop, knew the world outside of Barbies and Sesame Street and songs and bubbles and hair barrettes was plotting my demise, that it waited to gulp each of my little girl giggles. She knew it, so she filled me up to the brim with every dream and every smile and every assurance that I was made beautiful and full of a life that mattered, that nothing could steal that. She knew the world would threaten that peace, but that those sparkling moments, that love, that life, that beauty were all worth fighting for.
Boy, she is beauty, she is. I love it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I tell you, I just, and even thinking about your parents, and as I was doing my little research on you, there's just something there, that pride that your parents just passed to your siblings. So where do you fall in the birth?
I am the second of four, but I was the second of three for a long time. So I'm a middle child in my mind. You know? So.
You got that. Then you got this other one came along.
Right. Well, I mean, we love him. He's the only boy, the youngest.
He's
the only boy. Yeah. So he's spoiled. You know, we just give him whatever he wants, which is fine.
It is fine.
It's fine.
It is fine. So beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. So I have one more.
Yes, I would love it.
And this one, it's interesting. This poem actually makes me smile because I wrote it with my students. I'd given them an assignment to imitate an Amiri Baraka poem. And his poems, I don't, if you've never heard of Amiri Baraka out there in the world, he was a very explosive poet, a complicated man, you know, and when you do your research, as I've said, that's our theme, when you do your research, you will see the complication. So I'm not excusing the complications, but he was a very important poet for Black literature and all literature, truly. So I wrote this poem in his style, and it's about hair. Black hair is something that is just, it would take us years to talk you know, about it. And there's a lot of poems that I've written about it. And this one talks about the feeling that I had as a young girl. I used to wear my hair in braids and beads. I have beads on today. And I love the Williams sisters just for their power, but also that they had hair like me. I was like, wow, they look like me and they're on TV, they're winning, they're amazing. But then going to school and looking at girls who didn't have hair like mine, or even other Black girls who had straight hair, and being told or being shown that that was the way your hair was supposed to be, and that the way that it came out of my head was not right. Which, when you really think about that, that's the repair I'm talking about. Like, if we can't even grow hair out of our head and let it just be our hair,
something wrong with that.
Right. We have a lot of repair to do, you know, and that does have a negative impact on young girls. Speaking back to invisibility, you know, I remember when I was in Miami for grad school, I did some work with young people, and I did a workshop on loving yourself with some third graders, I think. And one of the little girls, a little Black girl, beautiful little girl, had beautiful kinky hair. And she said, my hair is ugly. I want it to look like Beyonce's hair, meaning Beyonce's like weave, not her, you know, natural hair. And if anybody's in the Beehive, please do not come for me.
Don't please.
We all know Beyonce's Black. She has hair like ours, okay? We know that. But that just hurt me so badly to hear her say that. And of course, I knew I had felt that way as a young girl, but hearing or seeing a little girl who you can see is just the most beautiful.
Breaks your heart.
I'm just like, wow, who is telling you that? Why don't you love yourself? So this poem is talking about that experience, and you may notice some things from Black hair that you recognize, like blue magic or perm, which, ouch. So here we go. Hair. Ooh la la, blue magic slathered on scalps, twists and braids, and oh, how mama makes us shine, how we clack down the hallways in our braids and beads. Oh, how we love the way our pigtails swing. But then we see those girls whose hair hangs free. Mama, let us be like them. Wow, how woman they are. Wow, oh wow, how they smell like mamas, and we still burping up milk. Oh mama, let our hair be grown. Let us be like them. Oh wow, what bright hot pain, this perm, its everlasting promise to kill that curl that chokes us, to make us pretty. Make us pretty. We are pretty when it makes us, but what did God make us?
Oh my goodness. You're right, we could talk all day about hair. But blue magic, I actually smell it when you say
right.
Sitting on the floor, getting that hair pressed, and whatever it is. Oh wow. And it's something about, yes, he's not right about your hair. Well, I tell you, I would love to see if we have any questions in the chat box yet, then we will. Please, I invite you to If you have questions for Ashley, to please enter them into the chat box. And I really want to start with just Poet Laureate.
Mhm.
Is that like, where did that come from? Like,
Mhm.
how did you, know that you wanted to do that, and when did you know? So talk to me.
Well, it's interesting. I always joke and say that I was born a 75-year-old woman. Like, I've always been very like oddly mature for my age and just very focused. So I remember being really, really young and learning about what you could be as a writer. So I learned that Toni Morrison won a Nobel Prize. So I said, oh, well, I want to be a writer, so I'm gonna have to win a Nobel Prize. That's on my list, and at 4 or 5, whatever, I was like, of course I could do that. I still believe I can, but I'm a little more practical about it now. It takes some steps. But when I learned that a Poet Laureate existed, I was maybe in like 7th or 8th grade. And I just thought, well, I got to add that to my list. I want to be a poet. I want to be a leader. I'm a Leo, as I said, so I do enjoy leadership positions. But I wanted to, show up for my art form and, be a leader in that space. So I've been kind of thinking about doing this for a very long time. And as the years went through college, grad school, I still said, yeah, I want to do this. I want to serve my state and my country, hopefully one day, just being an ambassador for poetry. So I've had the dream for a long, long time. I did not know that I would be the first person of color to hold the position or the youngest person. I assumed naively that by the time I got to be an adult, we'd be done with all that stuff.
Right.
Here we are.
Here we are. And does it bother you? Bother is probably not the right word, but to be sort of named as the first Black. Does that bother you?
It's impactful, I'll say it that way. I'm very proud always to be like very loudly a Black person. I never want to shy away from the fact that I'm Black. I'm from Alabama. Like, there's no like fancy magical thing to put on that. I am a Black person from the South, and I'm happy about that. So I'm glad that is a part of the recognition. But on the other side of it, I just feel so frustrated, I guess, that I am the first in almost a century. That is so many years. I mean, it wasn't that we didn't have a Black Poet Laureate because nobody was qualified.
Right.
That is not true. And you hear people using that language when you talk about hiring practices, and people say, well, we just hired the most qualified candidate. Okay, sure. Out of the people that you interviewed, yes. Right. But there are plenty. There have been countless Black poets in our state who could have served well in this position. And I think recognizing that is part of my responsibility as the first to not say, well, I'm the first, we're done. But to say, I'm the first, why am I the first? Right. Why did it take this long? And what does it mean about our community that it is taking this long for this to happen? What can we change? What are the opportunities here for us to become more inclusive and to actually reflect who's here doing poetry in Alabama? So yeah, I feel 2 ways about it,
I mean, and that's when I think about equity and we can't wait. It is those things. It's like we cannot wait for another 100 years to have some first whatever. I made the mistake of reading comments, and
don't do that.
And I was told earlier, like, you do not read comments because you can get upset. So you do not read comments that
not anymore. No, I learned that the hard way. The very first time I wrote for CNN about someone in Alabama who said he wanted to lynch all the Democrats, which is ridiculous. Sure. It's a ridiculous thing to say. I feel like objectively people should be able to be like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, I don't think we did that. Yeah. But I was reading comments excitedly. So like, oh man, my first CNN article, I was really happy. And ooh, that was the wrong idea. My goodness, people are bold through the computer screen. And I guess now in person too. But yeah, I do not read comments. Good. I have not read anything. When the announcements were made, I was like, I'm not reading any of that. Yeah. I
was mad. I was mad for you. I was there quickly, like, what? So striving for equity amid oppression and racism can feel like this uphill battle. Yet for some reason we decide like, okay, this is something good that we want to do. Not only we do that, it's in our mission statement, eliminating racism. So we're really either crazy or really believe in it. So how did you get sort of into this social justice kind of work? Because that's what I really think your poetry would be about.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's ever been a time that I haven't been doing it. Even thinking back to when I was 7 years old and I first discovered poetry and then I wanted to be a poet, the poem that I discovered was about Harriet Tubman. So it's by Eloise Greenfield called Harriet Tubman. And that poem is the thing that instructed me on what poetry could do. It could tell history, it could celebrate Black people, it could empower, it could make me feel like I had a voice. And so I've always sort of been writing about my people and our struggle and my hopes for a better future. And so I guess I never termed it social justice until the term became popular. I was just writing about the truth. I was part of the, freedom struggle, I guess you could call it. But really it comes down to just writing about humanity and trying to live in a humane way. That's all it is. So many people, as we said with the term reparations, are so hung up on what they think are hot button words. And the words do mean something else. Like you don't have to, if you don't want to use the term social justice, don't use the term. Just be good to people and seek out ways to help people. That's all that it means. So that's what I'm doing, yes, and I'll take the title of social justice. I'm fine with that. But at the core, I've always just wanted people to be okay. I've wanted people to be left alone, to live their lives. I've wanted Black people to be left alone. I'm still hoping that one day somebody will just leave us alone, and let us live. And so I'm glad to be doing it. And this is where I fit in. I'm not so good at confronting, law enforcement or, those sorts of direct actions. I know myself and I'm just not that person. And it took me a long time to understand that it's okay. Wherever I fit in is where I fit in. And in any justice struggle that we study, we can see there are so many people doing so many things. So there were YWCAs and people doing things all across the community. And where I fit in is teaching and writing and speaking. And I will do all those things forever. And hopefully it helps the world.
Well, I'll tell you, I always say everyone has a role to play.
Yes.
And we should all be doing that. You mentioned students. I want to make sure people know that you are an educator. So
Yes.
tell me again, what grades are you teaching?
Yeah, so I teach at two schools. I teach full-time at the Alabama School of Fine Arts, which is where I went to school, actually. So I teach 7th through 12th graders in creative writing there. I also teach graduate students at Converse University in South Carolina. Yeah, they're a low residency, so I can still live here.
Yes. Yes. And you came back. There was something I read or saw that where you had left Alabama for a minute. Can you talk about that journey back and the why?
Yeah, so growing up, I always thought I was going to leave. Most of us who are from here are like, we're getting out of here. There's nothing here. It's oppressive and all that kind of stuff. Not realizing that like the rest of the country, it's kind of the same, but
yes. Like, okay.
Exactly, yeah. So I left for graduate school. I stayed in state for undergrad, to try to like save the money and then splurge on graduate school. So that's what I did. I went to Florida International University in Miami. And going to Miami, I mean, I know it's further south geographically, but like, wow, that's a different planet. Like,
it is different.
It's totally
I don't
different.
think they consider stuff.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. You have to go back to the south when you go north
out
of Florida. So that was a really transformational experience for me for so many reasons. I received a great education, first of all. I really am so grateful for that program that I was in. I felt very supported and I was allowed to explore and be myself. But it also taught me, being so far away, it taught me that I actually did love the South. All those things that I complained about were not things that are a part of Southern culture per se. So the things that I love about the South is the slowness that we have here. Well, not so much anymore on the roads. It's something else. Okay. But just the pace of life is different, and the way that people will greet you as you walk by them. In other places where I travel, like I say hello and people are just like,
They look at you like you're crazy.
Either they do that or they just immediately look away.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I'm alive. Hello. So I love that. I love the food that's here. It's not great for your, arteries, but it's good for your soul. I love that. I love the way that the sky looks here. It just seems different to me than any other sky. And it could be because I'm from here. but the South has a certain just sweetness to it that I've never found anywhere else. So I loved all of those things, and I realized it once I wasn't around them. But what I didn't love were some of the political issues or injustices that I noticed, but I also noticed that those existed in Miami as well. As I traveled across the country, I started seeing, wait a minute, every place has these same issues. So I decided to come back because I realized if all of us left the South, how could it ever progress? If all of us who are forward thinking are gone, whoever is left is people who, you know, are not going to do the things that need to be done. And then also for the students, for the young people who are looking for examples of how they can survive, because they can't just pick up and leave.
That's right.
They have to stay where they are because this is where they live, where the parents are. So I thought, well, I have to go back and demonstrate not only to myself, but to others that this place is a place that can grow things too. It has in the past. We look at the civil rights movement and don't realize we're supposed to be proud of that. It's not
That's
just
right.
something we did for the whole country, but that started here. So many movements started right here, and they can keep happening here too. So that's why I decided to come back and just pour into the community and love the South, you know, openly.
Well, I am glad that you are back. And do we have a question? You're looking at me.
Yes. So we have two things. The first one is a positive comment from a Miss Polly. She's a proud Indigenous woman from New Zealand.
Nice.
And she said, your beautiful poems have brought back so many memories of how we were treated growing up here in New Zealand. However, our mama gave us the courage to face all these adversities of racism and to be proud of the women we are.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's
awesome.
That's wonderful.
and so in addition to standing against racism, it is also National Poetry Month. And we know that you are the director of the Magic City Poetry Festival, and we wanted to ask if you could speak a little bit to that.
Sure. I always forget to talk about this. People have to always remind me. Not because I don't love it, it's just I'm doing too much. Y'all. I'm doing too much. So the Magic City Poetry Festival is a nonprofit that I started in 2018. Wow, that's a long time. My goodness. Whew. So we started back then, and our mission is to celebrate poetry and community. And the way we do that is through a month-long festival in April, National Poetry Month. And everything that we do is free. So every event is always 100% free. That is hard to do, as you probably know.
Yes, it
It's
is.
very difficult. It takes a lot of funding on the back end and community support and people giving in kind and all of that. But the reason that we do it is because we believe in accessibility for everyone. We think that there shouldn't be anything stopping anyone from engaging in artistic programming, because we also think that art, as I said earlier, creates a path for change and empathy. And those are things that make our communities better. And we want everyone to have that same access. We don't want a hierarchy to exist where people think, oh, I have to, go to a certain school to go to this thing, or I have to make a certain amount of money or live in a certain area or whatever. We don't want any of that to exist. So everything is free, and there's all different kinds of events that we have. This month, we've been doing readings, and we also have this program called Poetry in the Park. We have our last one, shameless plug. Our last one is this Saturday, April 30th. And it's going to be at the Birmingham National Civil Rights Monument. So we're in partnership with the National Park Service and Scrollworks and St. Paul's UMC. And basically what will happen on Saturday from 2 to 4 is people will come to St. Paul's and they'll begin a poetry tour throughout the landmarks in the monument. So there will be 4 poets stationed along a trail, and a guide will take you through to each stop. You'll hear poetry that's about social justice and history, and you'll kind of just get to experience that living history through poetry. So we have that. Tomorrow there's an event in Trustville. All these things can be found on our website, which is www.magiccitypoetryfestival.org. And we do operate all throughout the year. So sometimes there'll be events in any month. It doesn't have to be April. We just want to make sure we're bringing what the people want to them. And we pay all of our featured artists. That's also very important to us. We can't pay a lot. We pay as much as we can. And we're working on getting even more, funding so we can pay even more people or pay them more. But we do pay everybody who works with us. We also have a scholarship that we started in honor of my dad last year. So we give that to a graduating high school senior every year. There's a way to apply, which again, if you visit that website, you
Okay.
will,
Make sure you let them know.
Yes.
Yeah.
you can find out how to nominate a student. And we give that scholarship, just like with our events, we don't want there to be anything preventing them from using that money for anything. You don't have to, some students aren't gonna go to college. That's fine, that's their path, they still need support.
That's right.
So even when somebody graduates and says, okay, I gotta take a gap year, or I need to go into this, field, or I wanna learn this trade, whatever, we are gonna give you $500 to use for whatever you need.
That is awesome.
Mhm.
That is fantastic. You are simply amazing.
Oh, thank you.
What's next for Ashley? I know you're doing a lot,
Yeah, I am.
but I know
mean,
you have dreams and
I
aspirations. of
do,
doing something else.
I do. Well, I mean, I wanna learn how to rest, that is top of my list.
There you
I need
go.
to learn how to rest.
Let me know when you know.
It's difficult. But I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, honestly. I have some plans as Poet Laureate, and hopefully they can come to fruition. But basically, I just want to get resources to people who need them. I think the whole state loves poetry in one way or another. They might not know it yet, but they do love it.
Yes.
And so I want to make sure that there are resources, there's money for programs to happen all across the state. And I hope I keep writing. I'm trying to find that balance. It's very hard to do. But I have a book that I'm supposed to be writing right now. I'm under contract. Hopefully nobody from that press is watching.
Right. Well, tell us about the books. Well, I want to make sure, and I want, if you have them all.
I do,
Kind
yes.
of hold them up so people can see. We want you to support Ashley.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll start by saying all this information is also on my website, which is www.ashleymjonespoetry.com.
Fantastic.
So the first book is Magic City Gospel, and these are ugly, like yours will be beautiful when you purchase yours.
That's okay. They're
So
loved.
these are my reading copies, so I have them wrapped in packing tape. Like they've been through a lot with me. This is my first book. It actually was my master's thesis, and I was blessed enough to get it published.
Nice.
By Hub City Press, which is a press out of South Carolina. Really wonderful Southern press. But yeah, this is the first one for everyone to see.
Yeah.
The second one is called Dark Thing. Yours will also be more beautiful than this. And it's from Pleiades Press, which is in Missouri. And both of these books, all the books are about my experiences as a Black person and history. So you can expect to find poems about my personal life, about history of America, of Alabama, all of those things. And the most recent is Reparations Now, which is also from Hub City Press. And this book has just been taking me on a journey, I tell you. I've been everywhere.
Oh my gosh. I mean, is this the one Dark Thing, the one with greens with,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Just the whole cultural experience around cooking greens is a thing. And we think so much of my mother. You are phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
And I thank you. And I invite everyone to join us in standing against racism, not just every April, but every day. And we invite you because it is way too important. That urgency of equity and justice now, we can't wait. So I encourage you all to do so. Please check our website to look for the Stand Against Racism pledge. I encourage you all to, in your businesses, with your family, with your church, or other institutions, faith-based institutions, to please take a stand against racism pledge. Thank you all for being at our Why We Talk with Miss Ashley M. Jones. Thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate it. Such an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay.